Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "Life is a constant oscillation between pain and boredom, a sentence sharp enough to wound, a sentence heavy enough to define an entire worldview." Tonight, we descend into the man who dared to stare at the world without illusions, a thinker who stripped reality bare, a philosopher who believed that existence itself was a mistake, yet within this bleak vision, he uncovered something strange, a kind of dark clarity, a truth most people fear to name. Schopenhauer saw the world as will, a blind, restless force that pushes all beings to strive, to desire, to chase, and to suffer. And he believed that only by understanding this force could we free ourselves from its chains. This is not a story of optimism. It is a story of confrontation, a journey through the shadows of human nature, and the quiet beauty that emerges when we finally accept life's tragic structure. Stay with me. Let us walk through the darkness he revealed, and maybe within that darkness, we find our own reflection. If you want more stories like this, dark philosophy, psychological narratives, and the lives of the world's greatest thinkers, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. Now, let us begin. The world begins not with light, but with a silent pull. A force older than thought, older than memory, older than every dream humanity ever carried. Arthur Schopenhauer called it the will, a blind, restless hunger at the foundation of all existence. Not the will we imagine when we speak of ambition or desire, but something far more ancient, far more intrusive, a primal engine throbbing beneath reality. He believed we are not born free. We are born captured, ensnared inside this invisible current, pushed to crave, to chase, to devour, to want without ever knowing why. Every heartbeat is a demand. Every breath is a grasp toward something just out of reach. The will pulls us forward, and we obey without resistance. We call this life, but Schopenhauer saw it for what it truly is, a ceaseless cycle of striving, suffering, and brief illusions of relief. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the thoughts inside your skull are not your own. Your desires feel familiar, but they were whispered into you. Your goals feel chosen, but they were planted by impulses older than humanity. You chase success, affection, pleasure, respect, but none of these pursuits ever end. They simply transform, mutate, evolve into new desires. Satisfaction is brief, temporary, evaporating the moment it is touched. The will survives by making sure you always want something next. Schopenhauer spent years watching this cycle unfold in the faces of strangers, in the movements of animals, in the ceaseless patterns of nature. He noticed something devastating. Every creature suffers because it desires, and every creature desires because it was built to suffer. To him, this wasn't pessimism, it was clarity. He believed the world is not a grand, rational design, but a wild, chaotic pressure that forces beings to live, to strive, to hope, and eventually to break. But inside this darkness, he found the strange shape of truth. He wrote that human beings are like prisoners endlessly pacing a narrow cell. We pace because we cannot stop. We search for meaning because standing still feels like dying. We love because loneliness burns like an open wound. We work because idleness claws at our minds. We hope because despair is too heavy to carry alone, yet every attempt at fulfillment betrays us. The moment we achieve what we longed for, the glow fades. The reward turns hollow. The desire dissolves into new desire. The striving continues, a life constructed entirely from chasing shadows. Schopenhauer believed this is why suffering feels so natural, because existence itself is a kind of wound. To be conscious is to feel the sharp edge of life cutting into you. To desire is to expose yourself to disappointment. To love is to risk heartbreak. To hope is to invite despair. Nothing is stable. Nothing is permanent. Nothing stays in our grasp, and yet we keep reaching. He once described human life as a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. Pain when we strive and fail. Boredom when we achieve and no longer know what to want. In both states, we are dissatisfied. In both states, the will remains undefeated, but this is not the end of his vision. This darkness is only the first step, the unveiling of a deeper path, because Schopenhauer believed that once you see the invisible chains, you are no longer controlled by them in the same way. Awareness becomes the first crack in the prison wall. To see your desires not as personal truths but as mechanical impulses is to weaken their power over you. Once you recognize the will operating inside you, you can begin to step back to observe your own mind as if from a distance, and that distance is liberation. He discovered that art has the power to break the chain, not because it gives pleasure, but because it suspends desire. When you lose yourself in music, when you are absorbed by a painting, when you dissolve into the atmosphere of a poem, you stop wanting, you stop grasping, you cease to strive. For a brief moment, you are free from the storm of the will. This is why beauty feels sacred. It is not luxury. It is not entertainment. It is escape, a temporary liberation from the restless machinery of existence. Schopenhauer believed the greatest freedom is the ability to quiet the will, to silence the hunger inside you, to reject the endless cycle of wanting and suffering. Not by force, not by violence, but by understanding. By turning away from the illusions and finally seeing reality without the distortion of desire. And yet he never claimed this was easy. The will is persistent. It returns again and again, reforming itself inside your thoughts, whispering through your dreams, reshaping your fears and fantasies. It is the architect of your emotions, the puppeteer of your impulses. To resist it is to resist the very structure of being alive. This is why Schopenhauer saw wisdom as something solitary, not glamorous, not loud, but quiet, inward, slow. The wise person does not conquer the world, but steps aside from its chaos. They do not chase attention, but seek clarity. They do not gather more desires, but let them fall away. Him. The world reveals itself fully only to those willing to withdraw from it. That is the essence of Schopenhauer's vision, a world ruled by a force that does not care, inhabited by beings who suffer because they must, and illuminated only by brief moments of liberation when the will loosens its grip. This is not a philosophy meant to comfort you. It is meant to awaken you, to show you the roots of your suffering so you can finally stop watering them. Schopenhauer invites you to confront the truth. Your fears, your desires, your ambitions, they are not you. They are currents of a river flowing through you. You do not have to drown in them. You can step onto the shore. You can watch them pass. You can begin slowly, painfully, patiently to reclaim your mind from the invisible engine that drives the world. In this understanding, suffering becomes not a curse but a teacher, a reminder that the will is not undefeatable, a signal that you are still grasping, still chasing, still entangled. Letting go is the first act of freedom. Seeing clearly is the second. And in that clarity, a new form of peace begins to take shape, a peace not given by the world but carved from within. This, Schopenhauer believed, is the beginning of real liberation. The moment when a human being stops being a prisoner of desire and starts becoming a witness to existence. The first moment you stop running and finally breathe. The first moment the world loses its power and begins to reveal its truth. The first moment you are no longer controlled by the will but begin to rise above it. The world, Schopenhauer believed, is not a grand cosmic design, but a blind, restless force clawing endlessly through every living being. He called it will, the engine of longing, hunger, lust, ambition, obsession, the force that whispers that nothing is ever enough. And so he asked the question most people spend their entire lives avoiding: if desire never ends, then what exactly are we chasing? Schopenhauer watched the world with the eyes of a man standing outside of it, observing how humans spend their days hunting illusions, money that dissolves into new needs, love that turns into jealousy, success that births anxiety, pleasure that curdles into emptiness. To him, the tragedy of life was painfully simple. We are built to want, but never built to be satisfied. He compared humanity to a pendulum, swinging helplessly between pain, the suffering of wanting, and boredom, the hollowness that follows after getting what we want. And no one escapes this motion. Not the rich, not the brilliant, not the powerful, not even he, the one who exposed it. And once you see the world through this lens, it becomes impossible to unsee it. Look around, people chase relationships to escape loneliness, but afterward fight to escape the weight of expectations. People build careers to define themselves, only to feel trapped by the very identities they've created. Everything we pursue secretly owns us. This was Schopenhauer's warning, not delivered with anger, but with a kind of exhausted clarity. He believed that life itself is structured in a way that guarantees suffering. Existence is the wound, desire is the knife, and consciousness is the awareness that the wound will never fully close. Yet, despite this bleak architecture of the world, his philosophy was not a submission to despair. It was an invitation to see life without illusions. Do not ask the world to satisfy you, he insisted. It cannot, not by design, not by nature, not by accident, because the moment one desire is fulfilled, another rises from its ashes, sometimes larger, sometimes darker, always hungrier. But here lies the strange beauty in his thinking. When you stop demanding that life be perfect, you begin to appreciate it for what it truly is. Not a paradise, not a prison, but a strange, fleeting dream. For Schopenhauer, the path to peace was not through conquest, but through understanding, a quiet kind of rebellion against the tyranny of wanting. He asked us to step outside the cycle, to observe desire like a storm passing through the body but not become the storm itself. This is why he admired artists, monks, musicians, and those who live far from the noise of society, because in moments of deep beauty or deep stillness, the endless craving of the will is temporarily silenced. Music, he believed, was the purest escape, a direct doorway out of the self, a moment when the world stops pulling at your bones, and desire temporarily forgets your name. In this silence, something extraordinary happens. You become more than your cravings, more than your fears, more than your endless pursuit of something you cannot name. You become, if only for a moment, a witness instead of a prisoner. That is the heart of Schopenhauer's message. You may not escape suffering, but you can escape the illusion that suffering is a mistake. When you understand the nature of desire, you stop taking your pain personally. You stop believing you're broken. You stop thinking happiness is a destination. Instead, you begin to walk through life with the calm acceptance of someone who sees the world clearly, and in that clarity, there is a freedom deeper than pleasure and more enduring than joy, not the freedom from suffering, but the freedom within it. The farther we move into Schopenhauer's mind, the clearer one truth becomes. Everything he wrote, everything he argued, everything he suffered was driven by a single, monstrous idea: the will, not the polite, rational willpower of common speech, not the optimistic will to succeed spoken by cheerful men with easy lives, but the will as Schopenhauer saw it, a blind, ceaseless, endless hunger that lives at the core of every creature, every moment, every phenomenon. For Schopenhauer, the world was not built on reason, nor on harmony, nor on divine design. It was built on a force that does not think, does not rest, does not care, a force that simply wants. And wanting, Schopenhauer wrote, is suffering, because to want is to feel the ache of absence. And even when desire is fulfilled, the relief is brief, a small pause, a shallow breath, before the next longing appears like a shadow behind your shoulder. Schopenhauer believed the will was the engine of existence. It pushes animals to hunt, humans to seek power, lovers to pursue one another, nations to crush their neighbors, and kings to wage wars they cannot win because their own desires swell beyond their own control. He saw it in human ambition, that burning, restless need to be more, have more, dominate more. He saw it in himself whenever envy rose in his chest, or irritation twisted his stomach, or when his solitude felt carved by knives. He wrote, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." This was the prison of humanity, a cage without walls, a trap disguised as freedom. Every act of rebellion, every attempt to escape desire, only deepens the chains. And Schopenhauer, pacing through his dimly lit rooms, listening to the muffled chaos of the world outside, felt the will clawing inside him like a creature he could not kill. He believed we were puppets whose strings were pulled by forces we never chose, whose cravings preceded our consciousness, whose impulses were older than our logic, whose wants were not ours but belonged to the will itself, using us as instruments to perpetuate itself through endless generations. To him, life was not a stage. It was a battlefield, a violent, unseen war between desire and disappointment, between craving and its collapse, between the will and its own exhaustion. He wrote, Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. Pain, the agony of wanting what we do not have. Boredom, the agony of having what we no longer want. He believed most people lived their entire lives swinging endlessly between these states, never understanding why nothing satisfied them, why victories turned hollow, why joy evaporated, why peace was so brief it felt like a rumor, why the heart feels full only moments before it feels empty again. Schopenhauer saw that the will's only constant companion was suffering, not the dramatic suffering of tragedy, but the quiet, ordinary suffering that fills human days, the hunger that returns even after eating, the loneliness that deepens even in company, the disappointment tucked inside every expectation, the longing for a life that always seems one step beyond reach. He believed that every human cry, every heartbreak, every tear shed in the secrecy of night, every moment of yearning that bursts like fire in the chest, all of it was the will expressing itself through us. Theo Schopenhauer. The greatest cruelty of existence was that the will did not die when the body rested. It did not sleep when the mind slept. It continued its relentless movement beneath dreams, beneath consciousness, beneath every attempt at control. This made freedom an illusion, autonomy a dream, happiness a fragile flicker that dies the moment the will demands more, which it always does. He saw the world not as a home but as an arena, and every living thing was a fighter forced into combat with hunger. Time, loss, decay, and endless need. Existence, he wrote, is a painful, ceaseless striving, and yet he did not stop at despair. He turned his gaze toward something deeper, a path not out of life, but out of the will's tyranny. He believed in the possibility of quieting the will, not through victory, not through wealth, not through pleasure, not through status, not through accomplishment, for all of these are merely temporary masks that the will quickly tears off, but through something else, something quieter, more ancient, more difficult, renunciation, the delicate, fragile, almost impossible art of wanting less, not more. He looked to monks, to sages, to artists lost in their work, to musicians dissolving into melody, to poets who forget the world while writing. Those rare souls, he thought, who have touched a moment where the will grows silent and the self becomes still, a moment where one is not grasping, not craving, not begging the world for something. A moment of pure presence, pure being. Theo Schopenhauer. This was the closest humans could come to freedom, not in achievement but in release, not in conquest but in surrender, not in accumulation but in letting go. He wrote, to desire nothing, to hope for nothing, to fear nothing, that is true freedom. Yet even this path is steep, and he knew it. He struggled with it himself. He fought anger. He fought impatience. He fought the bitterness that crept into his soul whenever he felt misunderstood or ignored. He was not a serene monk sitting beneath a tree. He was a restless man, full of contradictions, but he still believed that even a glimpse of the will's silence was enough to change the texture of one's life. He found such moments in music, especially in the works of Handel and Mozart, where sound became a sanctuary and the will seemed to dissolve into pure perception. He found it in art, in the shape of a sculpture, the softness of a painting's shadow, the stillness of a landscape untouched by human need. He found it in philosophy, in the quiet act of thinking, in the discipline of looking inward with uncompromising honesty. He believed that beauty was not a distraction but a doorway, a way to forget the will and remember the soul, even if only for a moment. And so Scene 3 ends with this paradox: a man who believed the world was built on suffering, yet spent his life trying to understand how humans might tease that suffering even for a breath, even for a heartbeat, even for one quiet moment where the will stops moving and the world seems almost peaceful. The older Schopenhauer sat alone in his dim apartment, surrounded by the silence he had always claimed to admire, yet haunted by the very world he wished to escape. The curtains barely let the daylight in. Dust floated in slow spirals above his desk. The ink on his manuscripts had dried long ago, but the thoughts within him never stopped moving. They circled, twisted, returned, like wolves pacing the edges of a dying fire. For Schopenhauer, this was the final battlefield, not against society, not against critics, not against time, But against himself, against the will he believed was the source of all suffering, he had written, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering." Yet even he questioned whether meaning was truly there, or whether meaning was a story we invent to soften the blow. He believed the will was cruel, blind, irresistible, a force that pushed every creature forward with no reason, no mercy, no final destination. The will wanted only one thing: to continue itself. And humanity, with all its dreams, hopes, passions, and tragedies, was simply the stage upon which the will played out its endless hunger. Schopenhauer often stared at the wall for hours, whispering, "Desire is a chain, and every link is forged from suffering." He thought of his younger years, the ambition, the pride, the anger, the nights spent burning with ideas he believed would shake the world. And yet, the world barely noticed. Not until he was old, not until he was tired, not until the flame within him had already withered into embers, he sighed. Recognition had come too late, but perhaps he thought that was fitting. Life was, after all, a tragic comedy written by a consciousness that never asked to exist. He walked to the mirror, looked at his own reflection, the white hair, the heavy eyes, the lines carved into his face by years of disappointment, solitude, and relentless thought. "Do you see now?" he murmured to the reflection. "This is what the will does. It drives the young to chase illusions, and leaves the old with nothing but truth." He returned to his desk, opened a notebook, and wrote slowly, with the weight of a dying century in each stroke. "The mind is our only redeemer. The mind is our shelter. But even the mind is not free." He believed freedom was an illusion. People did not choose their desires. Desires chose them. People did not choose their thoughts. Thoughts arrived uninvited. People did not choose their suffering. Suffering was stitched into the very fabric of being, and so, the only possible liberation was the quieting of the will, the gentle extinguishing of desire, the silencing of the restless flame, not through death, but through understanding, through clarity, through a stillness so deep that the will no longer had anything to hold on to. This was why Schopenhauer admired the ascetics, the monks, the mystics who stepped away from the world. He envied them their silence, their detachment, their ability to dissolve into peace. He once wrote, "Whoever is truly happy has renounced the will," but even he admitted he was not strong enough to renounce it completely. He still loved music, still loved the company of animals, still loved the brief, warm moments of sunlight on a winter morning. He could lecture the world about detachment, but he could not detach from his own beating heart. This contradiction tormented him. He was a philosopher of denial, yet also a man who felt deeply. He tried again to silence his thoughts, closed his eyes, breathed slowly, listened to the wind tapping against the window. Still the world crept in, memories, regrets, faces long forgotten, failures he pretended not to care about, every idea he had ever abandoned, every love he never allowed himself to feel. He whispered, "Suffering is the heart of existence." But does the heart ever stop longing? He knew the answer. The will never stopped. Not for him. Not for anyone. Night fell. The room darkened. Schopenhauer lit a single candle. The flame flickered, casting shadows up the walls, shadows that looked like silent, watching figures. He spoke to the shadows as if they were old friends. "You win. You always win. But I understand you now. And that is my victory." For Schopenhauer, understanding suffering was the closest thing to conquering it. Pain became less terrifying when illuminated by thought. Fear became manageable when named. And existence, though brutal, became honest when stripped of its illusions. He believed clarity was the most painful gift, but also the most necessary. In the final pages he ever wrote, he left a sentence that felt like a confession. "Life is a problem with no solution, but the beauty of thought is that it lets us endure the unsolvable." The candle burned lower. The shadows stretched. A cold breeze slipped through the window, but Schopenhauer did not shiver. He simply sat, quiet, thoughtful, as if waiting for the final silence to arrive, and in that silence, he found something he had been searching for his entire life. Not joy, not hope, not redemption, but acceptance. a calm, steady acceptance that the world was tragic, that the will was ruthless, and that consciousness was a burden no one asked to carry, yet to understand the burden, to face it without trembling, was its own form of peace. And so, alone in the dim light of his final years, Schopenhauer discovered a truth darker than despair, and more beautiful than comfort. The world is suffering, but the mind that understands suffering is free in its own way. He closed his notebook, extinguished the candle, and let the darkness embrace him, the one companion that had never lied. The journey now returns to silence, not the silence of rest, but the silence that comes after you have stared too long into the machinery of human suffering and recognized yourself inside it. Arthur Schopenhauer spent his life wrestling with a truth most people run from, that human existence is a restless hunger, a constant reaching, a perpetual ache beneath the ribs that no pleasure, no achievement, no beautiful moment can fully satisfy. He believed the world is driven by a blind force, not reason, not purpose, not cosmic harmony, but the will, a ceaseless, irrational impulse pushing every creature forward, demanding, craving, devouring, yearning. Look around you. Every ambition you chase, every desire that pulls you from sleep, every longing that haunts your heart at night, every fear that steals your breath, every wound you carry in silence, all of it, Schopenhauer said, is the will feeding on you as its instrument. And yet, in this darkness, he also offered a subtle flame, not a bright, triumphant fire, but a thin, trembling candle, just enough to see your own chains. Because once you see the will, once you understand how desire turns you into its puppet, you gain the smallest chance of slipping free, not by conquering the world, not by achieving more, not by chasing the next dream or the next person or the next illusion of happiness. No, Schopenhauer believed freedom begins when you stop running, when you look suffering in the eye and say, I see you, I accept you, and I will no longer let you guide my steps. This is why he admired art so deeply, why he saw music as a pure window into the essence of existence, why he believed compassion was the highest virtue. Not because these things erase suffering, but because they allow us to step outside the engine for a brief moment, to witness the world without participating in its endless cycle of wanting and hurting. And so we stand here, at the end of his philosophy, at the end of this journey into shadows, just as Schopenhauer stood at the end of every day alone, surrounded by books, haunted by the noise of the world, yet strangely peaceful in his understanding. Perhaps that is the true gift he left behind, not a solution, not an escape, not a promise of light, but a way to walk through darkness with clarity, unafraid of the truth, unafraid of the weight of existence, unafraid to confront the unbearable reality of being human, because in the very act of confronting suffering, you become something more than a victim of the will. You become a witness, a thinker, a philosopher of your own existence. And that alone makes you freer than most. So ask yourself, what desires control you? What illusions blind you? What suffering have you tried to outrun? What truths have you refused to see? And when you find the answer, do not turn away. Look deeper. Schopenhauer believed that to endure life is to understand it, not decorate it, not escape it, but see it as it is, without comfort, without anesthesia. Only then does life gain the strange purity he spoke of, a quiet dignity, a sharp, unforgiving honesty, and honesty, especially with oneself, is the first step toward freedom. This is the legacy he left us, a legacy that is not warm, not gentle, not comforting, but absolutely necessary. You have walked through his world now. You have felt his thoughts settle into your mind like a cold wind through an open window. You have carried his questions. Let them continue to echo in you. Let them disturb you. Let them reshape the way you look at desire, pain, meaning, and the self. And if this journey has touched you, if it has opened a door or a wound or a new way of seeing, then stay with us, like this video. Subscribe to this channel, because we will continue exploring the minds of those who saw deeper than the rest of us, those who challenged the world, those who confronted the abyss, those who dared to illuminate the darkest corners of the human condition. This is not entertainment. This is not distraction. This is philosophy made alive, and you are part of it now. Thank you for walking through the night with Schopenhauer. Until the next journey, into another mind, another shadow, another truth waiting to be uncovered.